10 years ago, international operations to free Afghanistan of Taliban rule began. Afghanistan had been identified as the source of the 9/11 attacks in America. But how did Afghan-Americans feel? Did they support the international moves at the time? And what do they now feel are the biggest changes over the last 10 years in Afghanistan? I spoke to an Afghan-American, Waleed Ahmed, who has lived and worked in both countries, to find out. This is the 10th anniversary of the initial bombing of Afghanistan after 9/11. Can you tell me, what was your reaction to the events of 9/11?
I guess the gut instinctive reaction was anger, frustration, or questioning, really, are we really that bad? Do we deserve a bombing? And if so, what did we do to cause it? And I was young, I was 21 years old, I was still in college, walking onto campus, and it was an early class, and so most of the folks on the West Coast didn't even have any clue what was going on yet. So I go into my classroom and nobody knows what's going on, and I've just witnessed 2 planes fly into Ground Zero, or into the Twin Towers. And so I walk back out of class, and I'm still kind of shocked about processing what just happened in New York. And I come out, and then, in the main plaza of campus, all the students are gathering, and, there's demonstrations are beginning, so on and so forth, and there's talk of bombing Afghanistan already. And then once it happens, sort of the initial anger of, well, why?
And as an Afghan-American, how did that impact on your own sense of identity?
Growing up, there's a natural tendency to just be Afghan. And so you associated with them, with your culture and with your family and your friends. But it was almost sort of an unsaid, unspoken, just natural state of existence. You didn't need to really discuss what it meant to be Afghan. You just were. I think after 9/11, it became something much more tangible almost. And people realized that, well, being Afghan means X, Y, and Z from this perspective. But being Afghan from my perspective means X, Y, Z, and every other letter.
And then in 2007, you went to Afghanistan. How did that change your sense of identity?
It wasn't until I got to Kabul and worked in Afghanistan for the duration of my time there that I realized how American I actually am. When I went to Afghanistan, coincidentally, my nickname there was Khariji, the foreigner. Kind of interesting, kind of a rude awakening, if you will, to realize that in this land that I've, up until that point, for 26, 27 years of my life, have associated myself with, that's home. I'm a Khariji.
And going forward, how much do you feel you'll be able to maintain a connection in helping Afghanistan?
That was one of my big decisions for coming back to the States, actually. When I went to Afghanistan, back in 2007, I realized that what I could do at the sort of the young age of 26, 27 is probably leaps and bounds below what I could potentially accomplish. Once I've been able to sort of ground myself in a way, and I guess develop myself in a way that can be of a lot more use to the nation. Because you can support Afghanistan just as well from a couch in Los Angeles as you can by sitting in a parliamentarian's chair in Kabul.
If you had to give some advice to those international forces drawing down in Afghanistan about one thing to leave behind in the country, what would that be?
If the U.S. forces were to leave Afghanistan, the basic things that they should be able to provide for the people is infrastructure. And as simple as electricity, water, power, and roads. If those can be left behind, and then the U.S. and then the Afghani government itself is able to enforce some level of security and safety over those 4 specific areas, I think what we'll see is the people themselves will realize, I will support the local Afghani police, because if I don't support the local Afghani police, then the Taliban come right in and cut off power lines, cut off our water supply, ruin the roads. So if I see a couple of Taliban planning on ruining the only road in and out of town with a roadside bomb, I'm going to go ahead and raise a red flag.
As Afghanistan attempts to become a new country, one of the aspects that's mentioned a lot is corruption. Now that Western countries are starting to draw down, how can we ensure that the gains that they've made aren't lost to corruption? And how much of that did you see and what can be done to address it?
I think, one, I agree, it's a very serious issue. I think when the U.S. decides to formally leave Afghanistan, taking care of corruption within the government is going to be one of their, I think, biggest challenges, and at the same time, one of the biggest opportunities for them to foster faith within the remaining Afghani people that this country can sustain on its own. If the U.S. does nothing else, or the NATO forces do nothing else, they need to instill some level of confidence in the people that you can sustain yourselves. And we've given you all the tools and infrastructure to do so.